We've been talking about love, discussing Jesus' teachings on love. Disciples are students of a love that makes no sense. Trying to understand, trying to embody a godly love, agape, different than eros, different than philos, God's love.
All right.
We've talked about a few things in the past, that God is love, but love is not God. People tend to make a God of love. They have a notion of what love is, and they will try to project that onto God, assume that's what God's going to do and how God's going to be. Then when he shows himself to be different than that, they assume it's not God because it's not what they think love is. Disciples, along the discipleship continuum, are to learn what love is from God. My notions of loving people did not include a lot of the stuff that I have learned from God along the way.
All right.
He has taught me how to love differently, how to love more completely, how to love better, and how to love in accordance with what I've experienced from him, which is completely different than what I would have thought love was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Love is biblically understood first in terms of action before it concerns itself with emotion. This is where we talked about how you treat people matters. God is every bit as concerned with how you treat one another and how you act towards one another as he is towards how you treat him and act towards him. And if you think about the reverence with which we sometimes, in theory, act towards God, the reverence we have towards him, because we don't want him to smite us. We don't want him to hit us with a plague, or drop an anvil on our head. And we think about how casually we can regard one another. When you consider that God is just as concerned about how we treat one another as how we treat him, it should give us pause to how lightly we take other people. Along the discipleship continuum, disciples are to begin by loving their neighbors as themselves and grow to love our neighbors as we have been loved by the Father. That is the spectrum. At the very least, you need to be able to love your neighbor as you love yourself, assuming, one, that you know how to love yourself. If not, that's a whole nother lesson and a whole nother skill set to develop. But in as much as you know how to love yourself, you ought to love your neighbor, and you grow into loving them as the Father has loved you, as you experience more of the Father's love.
Okay.
You can't continue in a love you've never experienced or you have limited experience with, so you grow into that. Love is as love does. That's where we had the big bulletin, the big chart that I still have to get up online. The fundamental benchmark for spiritual maturity, and this is where we're going to park for most of the day. The fundamental benchmark of spiritual maturity is how skilled a person is at loving. How well do you love? Paul provides a list of positive and negative considerations regarding agape, against which we can sit and measure ourselves. These items in 1 Corinthians 13 provide a means of assessing in real terms how well we love, starting with how good am I at being kind while I am suffering long.
Okay.
It's a skill to develop. Some of us are better at it than others. Some people, they can just run around and smile all the time and always be pleasant no matter what they're going through, and they're just perky and nice, and you know they're struggling, but they're just very good at being kind while they're suffering long. Other people, they ain't even got to suffer long for you to know they've been suffering. Because it's all over their face, it's all over their body language. You say hi to them, or whatever, and you deal with that. So there's spectrums and there's room for growth, and you can go down that list. But the fundamental question of spiritual maturity is, how well do I love? And we're going to get into seeing how important that is as we speak today. As disciples grow in their capacity, grow in God, their capacity to love ought to expand.
Okay.